Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Nerrell. This is the show for mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, or unsure what's next, and know that doing more isn't the answer. Here, we focus on how you show up. That means how you make clear decisions, build influence, and take control of your career. Let's get started. Hey there, thanks for joining me today, and I've got a great guest I can't wait for you to meet. Tammie Calys is an executive reinvention architect, corporate strategist, and the founder of Next Level Me. She has over 30 years of experience driving corporate strategy and leading massive organizational change. But here's what I want you to know. Tammie realized a dangerous truth for herself and the corporate world in general. High-achieving leaders are brilliant at mitigating risk for their companies, but terrible at mitigating risk for their own personal capacity. Today, Tammie helps mid-career professionals and executives break what she calls the curse of competence, the phenomenon where top performers become the dumping ground for everyone else's emergencies. Can you relate? By applying enterprise-level risk mitigation to personal career strategy, Tammie helps leaders who are silently cracking rebuild their boundaries, execute tactical workday shutdowns, and design a career blueprint that actually gives them energy rather than draining it. After you've listened to the episode, make sure to go back and check the show notes, as Tammie has a special resource for all of you. So let's get into it. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Tammie Calys. Tammie Calys, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
It's so good to be here, John. Thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, same. And Tammie, you are a perfect example of how we can cultivate a relationship on LinkedIn. And I appreciate getting to know you there and seeing each other's posts and commenting on and everything. And that's what kind of predicated this conversation today, is just to learn a little bit more about how our mid-career professionals are navigating this entire job landscape. Here we are in the middle of 2026. But before we get there, you've got a mid-career moment, and I'd love for you to share it with our guests.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of a big one, and hopefully it resonates with people. So prior to forming my current company, Next Level Me, in the middle of last year, I actually had spent a lot of years in corporate, and I had a consulting company that I had run very successfully for 15 years. Hit total burnout myself. And much like you encourage your listeners to do, I did an and instead of an or. And I started looking for, what does my next move look like? And I wanted something that provided me not just a paycheck, but more fulfillment and more energy and more joy. And that was basically the origination of Next Level Me. I am living my next level me. And I am trying to help individuals find their next level me as a part of that process, hopefully removing some of the roadblocks along the way.
When you think about creating your next level me, what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself in the last year?
That it's very hard when you're in the throes of it to step back and actually be able to see clearly. Being able to have clear direction as to where you need to go and what's the right fit for you is probably the hardest thing to come to grapple with and to come to clear direction on, because I think we're so set on what we are, who we've been, what we've done, that we forget to realize that those things can be transferred to something different. And just because we've always been or done that doesn't mean it's the right fit for us based on where we are in our current state.
Yeah, I love how you phrase that, because as you know, we've talked so much on this show about what fit actually looks like, and identifying when the fit is phenomenal and when it's not, and when it's appropriate or needed. And so I love the work that you're doing around getting clear about this idea about what this next level me actually looks like. Tammie, part of what brought us to this conversation was our chats and comments and conversations leading up to today about what this job market looks like, and obviously navigating a lot of workplace uncertainty, especially for that mid-career, mid-level, senior level type professional who's trying to figure out whether or not they're safe in their job or whether their company is going to get acquired. Are they going to even have a job? And so at the time of this recording, so our listeners clearly understand, we're recording this at the beginning of May. What are you seeing in the job market right now that mid-career professionals should be really mindful and paying attention to?
Well, first of all, I think it's a couple of things. I think there's a lot of fear in the market right now. And I think as a result of that, a lot of individuals who probably should be looking for their right fit are hesitant to do that because there's a bit of guilt that I think is weighing on high achievers right now who have a role from a standpoint of so many individuals have been displaced and are out of work for various reasons. And so there's almost like a why should I even think about trying to do something else? I'm one of the lucky ones that still has a role. So why should I be, selfish and figure like I need something else? At least I have something. And so I think that's creating a hesitancy to potentially make a move whenever there's really a need from how they're struggling and what they're suffering with in terms of burnout inside to do that. But I think along those same lines, there's also an epidemic right now of people taking on more and more work to try to prove that they are worthy of the job that they have. And I call that the curse of competence. It's like for those of us who are high achievers that are very competent at what we do, everyone else sees that too. So what ends up happening is we become the paths of least resistance for all of the organizational chaos and all of the fire drills that everyone else has. And all of that work ends up getting thrown on those people that are competent. And to be a team player, they don't want to say no. So they just continue to absorb and absorb and absorb. And that capacity continues to be eroded. That prevents them from being able to actually have the bandwidth to look for something else as well.
I really appreciate you calling that out. And for the listeners, if you're multitasking, come back to us for a minute because I loved how you phrased this whole idea of us wanting to say yes more to prove our value, our worth, we're dependable. And that certainly leads to not only just a level of frustration, but also in your work, a level of exhaustion and burnout. So
Very
how
much so.
so how do you help people say no without the resentment and angst about disappointing people?
Yeah, so there's actually a tool that we're going to make available to people at the end of the podcast today. It's what I call the emergency boundary SWOT file,
Mhm.
and it's three different ways to go about. First of all, establishing a parameter to the point that you have the ability to give a thoughtful reply. So one of the things I want all of the listeners to key into right now, your biggest risk of absorbing things that you shouldn't onto your plate is that immediate yes, that in the moment yes. Someone's in your office, someone's on the phone, and in order to make sure that you don't look like you're being resistant, you're going to say yes. I want you to like memorize this phrase. That sounds like a very interesting project. Let me take a look at my current calendar and my current commitments, and I will get back to you in the morning so I can give you a realistic answer as to how I can help with that. That buys you 24 hours to then take time to think through those things that you just told them, your calendar and your commitments, and assess how you can actually contribute or not contribute and what the most appropriate reply is back to whatever they're asking. So that's the first step. And then what the tool will provide with is there are several ways to say no without it coming off as you're being obstinate, or you're not being a team player, or you're lazy, or whatever. And one of them is the trade-off. So let's say your boss says, I've got this big project I want you to be a part of. And you can say, that sounds fantastic. So I'm currently tied to project A and B. Which one of those would you like for me to delegate to someone else or deprioritize so I can take on this one?
I
What you
like
just
that.
did in that situation is that you put the onus back on your boss to basically establish what the right priorities are, and you didn't just automatically absorb new work as a result of it. And then let's say someone comes to you, this often comes from like different team members, and this one I call the alternate solution. So someone comes and says, hey, we've got this thing. I really want you to take the lead on it. Can you run these meetings? Da 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 da. And the thoughtful response is, you know what? I think that's an extremely important initiative. I just don't have the capacity right now to do that. But let me tell you what I can do. Once you come up with the solution, I would be more than happy to spend 15 or 20 minutes talking through it with you and provide you feedback so that you have that going forward. You're still a team player. You're still on board with the initiative. You're going to contribute. You're just not going to contribute at the level by taking it all onto your desk. And then the last one is, I find this one more, and I have to remind myself of this one in terms of external commitments, like people outside of you, like the kids' PTA, or I want you to be a softball coach, or the whatever it might be. And that one is basically, that's a flat out, you know what? I'm at capacity right now. I just really can't take on anything else, but I'm cheering you on, and anything I can do to support, just let me know. And so you're still kind of on board, you're supportive, but you're not absorbing one more thing. And those three things are what I really coach people to leverage to be able to maintain what I believe is the appropriate level of capacity, which is an 85% capacity level,
Hmm.
so that if those emergencies do come along that you have to jump into, you've got a 15% buffer and a 15% cushion there that you can actually take those on without totally blowing yourself out of the water in terms of where you have your own energy and return and renewal time.
I like how you walked us through all those examples, Tammie, and you certainly gave us some really good things to say in the moment. How do you help or how do you coach someone who, let's say, has a huge amount of fear about saying the wrong thing, or if they stand up for themselves and they say this, that they're not going to be liked, or it's going to make them look bad in terms of leadership, or it's going to make them look less than. How do you coach them around that part of the piece so they can confidently show up and say these kind of things to protect their boundaries?
Well, it's exactly that. It's the confidence. So it's helping them to understand that from their own internal mindset, every time they say yes to someone else, they're saying a silent no to themselves and to their own energy and their own capacity. So it's basically establishing a level of confidence that you are good enough, you are worthy enough, you are in a position where you should honor yourself and your own capacity to the point that you respect yourself as much as you respect the feelings of everyone else and the capacity of everyone else. And that's probably the hardest thing, John. It's like
Mm.
confidence is the hardest thing to kind of help work people through. And we have a lot of people who struggle with that. But once they start with just kind of what I call micro habits. So just tiny steps of making sure that, they try something and everything didn't blow up as a result of it. And that gives them a little bit more confidence. The other thing is I often have people go back and look at their life journey. And I have them look at all of the hard things that they have come up against in their life and how they have managed to work through those and how they came out better on the other side as a result of that. And sometimes just going through that kind of that memory lane, for lack of a better
Sure.
word, to understand how you've actually shown that confidence and demonstrated that strength in the past gives you a little bit of a reminder and a little bolster in regard to the ability to do it one more time or take the next step.
Would you say this is a generational problem or circumstance in terms of always wanting to say yes, that a person who, let's say, is in their 40s or early 50s might struggle with this more than a younger professional who's in their early mid to late 20s?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think those of us, as we get to mid-career, we've somehow been conditioned by the corporate environment that, the people that do the hard work and are the team players and are the yes men are the ones that kind of get rewarded or get ahead.
Hmm.
And so I think it has become an ingrained mindset. I also think it's a matter of how we were reared as children. You always were trained to get the good grades and be the best person on the sports team and all of that type of stuff. I don't see that as much in the younger generation coming up. I mean, and I applaud them for that, frankly. I mean, people can say what they will about what the workforce is going to look like with the younger generation, but at least they're not afraid to establish their boundaries and say, no, I'm not willing to do X, Y, or Z, or I am not going to go into a role where I don't have these specific things that are important to me in place to start with. And it's, say what you will, they're probably going to be better off in terms of not ending up in some of the burnout
Mm.
situations that we see from a mid-career standpoint because they're learning early on to make sure that those boundaries are in place, and then that will carry through with them as they continue in their career as
Yeah.
well.
Tammie, I'll never forget when I was leading a team in a prior organization, and a very ambitious younger professional wanted the visibility and the exposure, and they wanted to learn. And we were a relatively small enough company that it was not uncommon for us to interact with the president of the organization. And so at an all hands meeting, this younger professional speaks up and says, I would love to learn about X. So if there's ever an opportunity, I would love to be a part of this. And the president said, great, there's a meeting at 4 o'clock today. Come to the meeting, to which they did. And I said to myself, I'm going to stick around for the fallout. So I stuck around. I'm hanging out in my office and everything. And this young professional comes to my door, and they just look at me and they burst into tears.
No.
And they said, my weekends are gone. My nights are gone. I've got all this work now. And I just looked at them and I said, well, you brought that on yourself.
Yeah, I recall a similar story where I told a young man he had to stay late because we had to get some reports done for the CFO, and I heard him on the phone saying, "Dude, I know I'm supposed to be at happy hour right now, but I gotta work, man."
Tammy, I often say like those situations, we're lucky when they happen once, because then we learn those boundaries and we don't let them happen again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
Exactly.
that's good.
Oh
That's good. I'm
my.
sure. I'm sure everybody listening has something that they can relate to about that in terms of how
I'm
we
sure
we just
so.
pushed our boundaries out the other way. Tammy, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about something you've talked with me previously, and I'd love for you to share this with the listeners, is this idea of silent cracking. Can you define it for us and tell us exactly what that means?
Yeah, so silent cracking in my definition is it really is like the result of what we just talked about. As you continue to take more and more and more and more on, it's like the equivalent to death by a thousand Chinese paper cuts, right? Every time you rob yourself of your own capacity and your energy, your internal armor gets kind of charred just a little bit. And eventually, as you continue to like strike after strike after strike, it builds up to the point that it may not show in your face and it may not show in your job performance yet, but inside you're starting to slowly break down. And if you allow that silent cracking to continue, it will eventually get to full blown burnout to the point that you aren't able to actually perform to the level that you need to any longer, or that you are in such a miserable state that you may be putting on the mask in the office, but you're taking it out on your spouse, your children, your friends, because it has to have a release somewhere. So it's normally coming out where we're eroding those relationships that are the most important to us because we are trying to hold it all in and not let it show in the work environment.
So when someone does start to silently crack, and to your example there, they're starting to take it out on the people who are closest to them. If they're not able to see that in the moment, what could someone who loves them say to them to help maybe increase their awareness or perspective that maybe they are silently cracking?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was last weekend or because I schedule my LinkedIn posts ahead of time, if it's this weekend, but there's one on the phantom presence.
Mhm.
So children are often the most honest rather than those of us who are spouses, to be able to say, yeah, dad, I know you say you're at my soccer game, but you're not really here.
Mhm.
Or, or I really I don't even want you to tell me that we're going to do X, Y, or Z because you're not going to really be present. You might be there physically, but you're not going to be present. So I think, just starting to hold a mirror up a little bit and be able to show examples of where while they are physically in the moment, they're mentally still wherever. I mean, they're mentally checked
Sure.
out. And I think I would encourage those of you listening who have someone in your life that's in that situation to be brave enough to raise that as a mirror to them, obviously very gently, but it sometimes creates that jolt that people need to actually realize, oh my goodness, it happened to me in my career. My husband basically said, you go into your cave, which he was saying was my office. You go into your cave. I see you for 30 minutes at dinner, and then you're back in your cave again.
Mhm.
And he's like, so I don't ever see you any longer. I mean, you're not here. So, it was that moment that made me realize that I needed to make a change and that I needed to shift in terms of what I was doing to something that allowed me to be more present um, as opposed to consumed by what I was doing.
Sure. And I can only imagine how it happens once. And I've been guilty of this too, right? Like it happens once and you think, okay, this is just going to be for today. And then it
Yep.
happens the next day. And then it just becomes something you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I've actually, and I don't, it's not one of the resources that have given to you, but I can also share it with you. It's a part of the 3 day shut or the 3 step workday shutdown that I am going to provide the listeners. But there's a transition bridge in that shutdown, the last step, which is saying you can't just automatically go from who you are at work to who you need to be at home. So you have to have some type of practice, some type of ritual to be able to do that. And I've developed a driveway decompression tool
Mm.
that basically is an audio segment that helps you, you know, if you're not driving to work anymore, do it before you walk out of your home office or whatever. But sit in silence, kind of go through the steps of the decompression in terms of taking all of those tasks, locking them in the glove compartment. They're safe. They're going to be there tomorrow. You don't have to worry about forgetting them. And actually get back to a phrase I think I used earlier, a human being, not a human doing. Because when we show up in that work mindset, we're still a human doing. Our brain's still going through the task of the day. It is not actually present with our family.
Mm. What is your favorite workday shutdown?
My favorite workday shutdown is I have to be religious about this myself, so I'm going to admit to everybody it takes practice and it takes conviction. But my favorite workday shutdown is I actually have an audio little meditation that I put in. I walk a mile, I listen to my little audio meditation, and that decompresses me. It clears the RAM of my brain to the point that it replaces all of my work with kind of these meditative thoughts, and then I'm actually able to physically, mentally, and emotionally decompress to the point that I'm ready to kind of go into the evening at that point.
Nice. Boy, the pandemic did a number on us when it comes to workday shutdowns, didn't it?
It did. It totally did. Because you're never, if you are working from home, you are never, quote, away from the office. So,
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, we went from being so enveloped in a commute, and even though many people are back in the office 5 days a week and they've had to relearn how to adjust to commuting and things like that, but there's a lot to be said about that decompression time after your workday and commuting home, whether it, be train, bus, car, bike, whatever it is. Um, I think if anything, maybe we learn to value that time a little bit more.
yeah, I mean that when we were going into the office, we had that natural transition bridge that I just talked about, right? Because in terms of your ride home, you at least had some segment of time, whether it was like you said, whatever vehicle, listening to the radio, just kind of bringing everything down a notch or whatever. It was kind of naturally built into our routine. Now, if we like get up from our desk, shut our laptop or whatever and walk into the next room, we believe, okay, we've done it. No, you have not.
As someone who works from home, yes, I can get that. I'm not always good with that, but I can completely understand and relate to that. So,
Yeah.
Tammie, we've covered so much today, right? We've talked a little bit about what the job market is looking like in 2026 and how mid-career professionals need to be kind of paying more attention and having their finger on the pulse of their own fear about whether their job is safe or not. We've talked about silent cracking. We've talked about boundary setting. And as we start to wrap up, I'd love to know from you, what advice would you give someone to help them build their mid-career GPS right now in the middle of 2026 so they can figure out whatever is next for them in their career?
Yeah, I would say that my advice would be don't ever believe your job is safe. Don't ever believe because you're doing a good job that's recognized, because likely it's not. I think you did a segment not too long ago, John, on the fact that if you're not advocating for yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yep,
So
exactly.
I would say keep your eyes wide open and make sure that you're being true to yourself in regard to what your real fit is, what your North Star is. Because if you don't know what your North Star is, then a GPS is just going to take you in the wrong way a lot faster. So you have to be realistic in regard to truly identifying and finding your fit, finding that compass that's going to allow you to understand where you're going, and then capitalizing on the steps that are available through folks like you to be able to help you get there. And don't ignore it, and don't think that you've got all the time in the world to do it, because a lot of those people that are out there right now never saw it coming, and we don't know when it's going to actually happen. We've got to advocate for ourselves and be looking out for something that is our next best thing, our next level me.
Yeah. Great. Absolutely. So, Tammie, you've got a gift for all the listeners in terms of this swipe file. So, I want you to talk about that, but also share with us where people can connect with you and follow you.
Absolutely. So yeah, there are two things that if you guys are looking or at your desk, John's going to include the emergency boundary swipe file and the three-step workday shutdown that I mentioned in the notes. But if you are out and about, you can find me on LinkedIn at Tammie, Tammie, Calys, Calys. Connect with me and DM me the word boundaries, and I will send you both of those files. And I love to hear back from people in terms of which ones of those they put into play first. So I would love to hear back to you, and would love to have you follow along with what we're doing from going forward.
Great. I will make sure that those instructions are in the show notes for people to double check and reference that as well. Tammie, I appreciate our connection and you've been a great connection so far this year. I'm so happy we got to connect. I look forward to getting to know you more. And thanks for being a great guest on the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
Thank you for having me, John. It's been a total pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Same here. So my friends, look, if there's one big takeaway from this episode, I want you to focus on because of my conversation with Tammie today. It is about boundary setting and what are your non-negotiables for how you are protecting your own balance when it comes to your work and life. And so one of the things that really stuck out for me in our conversation was how Tammie identified certain things that we might be cracking, if you will. You know, we get short with our spouse or short with our kids and just being more aware of when the pressures of work are really starting to impact us. And if you are aware of that, you have an ability to change that in some way. And so whatever that is and how you want to show up for that, that is a huge step in simply managing whatever is going on in this job market right now to protect yourself and protect your well-being moving forward. So I hope this episode was helpful. Tammie, thanks again. And my friends, remember this, you will build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Kindly share it with someone who needs it. And if you're tired of feeling stuck, overlooked, or underutilized in your career, go to my website, johnneral.com, to get started. There you'll find free resources, ways to work with me, and details about the Show Up Leadership Lab, my signature membership for mid-career professionals who want to lead better, get noticed, and elevate their career. All the links are in the show notes. You can grab what you need right there. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you're getting value from the show, take 30 seconds to leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, how you show up matters, and I'll see you next time.